Welcome to the Success Revenue Podcast, the only podcast in the Middle East that brings you leaders in customer success, account management, sales, and go to market to share ideas, perspectives, and valuable learnings on how to successfully drive revenue, delight customers, and take it to the next level.
I am your host. I'm Hadal Saad, CEO of Revster, the modern customer management platform. And with me, I have my amazing co-host, Ida Ferrero, CS thought leader, speaker, and advisor. And we are excited to bring you a long list of experienced and seasoned guests throughout this first season of the Success Revenue podcast. On today's episode, there's no exception. We have our first global voice and influencer joining us for an episode to share her experiences and thoughts. Amongst other things that we'll cover today is how customer success in the fintech and the financial sector can play out, especially in enterprise organizations. We'll also speak about the impact and importance of AI and how it's shaping and reshaping customer success across industries, including the fintech space. And last but not least, we'll speak about how a woman can be empowered in this man-dominated sector, how you can advance your career and step up from middle management into executive leadership roles throughout your career. So super excited for today's conversation. We're bringing someone on that we've collaborated with before on other projects. She's very seasoned, very experienced, and brings a ton of knowledge from the customer success space in particular. So it should be a great conversation. I'm excited for it. How about you, Ivy?
I'm so excited. I love Cinthia. I love her energy and her personality. It's so contagious that it just makes me so excited to be around her. Yeah, and I feel bad that I'm not in the US. I feel like in the US there is such a beautiful big CS community, and I know she's hosting a lot of events in New York, and I really would love for Dubai and other countries within the Middle East to be able to get to the point that we can host events and actually meet in person.
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. It's, as someone spent most of my career over there, obviously, it, it's a much bigger community, more events, more communities in themselves. But I think that's kind of what we've created now with the Success Revenue community, whether it's the podcast, the newsletter that's coming out, which again, plug for everyone listening. Make sure you sign up for the newsletter as well and get all the latest and greatest there. But it's definitely something that I think is on the rise in the Middle East, which is super cool. I was actually in Riyadh again last week for an event where I was speaking on a panel about customer success. It was an event focused on churn in particular, how to prevent churn, how to work it, mitigate it, think about the different strategies around churn prevention and beyond. And it was actually a very good event hosted by Jizzer, which is a HR tech company in Saudi. And they're doing this kind of series of customer success, which has been really, really cool to follow and now participate in. So I think it's coming more, Ivy, slowly
Oh,
but surely. And hopefully we know we're doing our part, and maybe next year we'll start hosting a few events as well. What do you think?
yeah, that would be amazing. I think we should set a goal of doing something like in October would be really nice. Now, of course, the summer is upon us, so no point.
Yes,
But yeah, October would
exactly.
be amazing.
Yeah, it's getting hotter and hotter outside there. So yeah, July, August is right around the corner here, and June obviously will be hot as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
we'll do that in October. I think that sounds like
yeah,
it's a good time of the year to try
yes,
host
and
the gathering if we don't want to be in the mall, basically.
yeah, and talking about
Yeah.
heat, should we bring Cynthia out? I know she's gonna be bringing some
Yes,
fire.
I think so as well. Yeah, that's a great segue, Ivy. I love it. Let's do it if you're ready.
Yes, let's do it. Here we go.
All right. Welcome everyone to today's episode of the Success Revenue Podcast. We are extremely excited to have an international top voice and guest on the show today. We have Cinthia Silva, who's a customer success leader with extensive experience in the finance and fintech sectors in particular. And throughout her career, Cynthia has driven really impactful customer success programs, managed large scale business portfolios, and led extensive programs and customer engagement and different strategies across multiple organizations and industries as well. Cynthia is not only a thought leader within the fintech and customer experience space, she's someone, customer success space, she's someone that has helped drive product adoption, retention, and revenue growth across multiple organizations. She's also an award-winning CS influencer and thought leader, and she's a regular speaker at many industry events. I'm sure many of you guys have seen her or heard a lot of her talks across many of those that are in customer success. And she's someone that also actively contributes to the customer success space and different communities, which we, of course, love. And as part of that, love having her on today to discuss her experience and expertise with us today. So, Cynthia, welcome to the show. We're super excited to have you on. And as I was kind of saying, you have so much experience across so many different verticals of the customer success space. So I think it's going to be a great conversation today. Welcome.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me here. I'm always delighted to chat with you and Ivy. So yeah, let's do this thing. Let's chat CS.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Awesome, awesome. So we'll just jump right into things, Cynthia. And I think maybe to kind of set things up a little bit, why don't you start us off with just tell me a little about your background, right? Kind of how you came up in this crazy CS world and your different experiences, but just kind of highlight on your background, and then we'll jump into some different things from there.
Sure, of course, of course. I mean, so ironically, I actually started on the sales side in banking, and early in my career, I was sat on trading desks, derivatives trading desks at two banks in Seattle and in New York. And, you know, that 10 years, that was a lot, and I just had to walk away. It was so stressful, but I learned a lot, and if nothing else, I learned how to not be, you know, under high pressure situations, how to kind of keep your cool, and I think that sort of set the stage for later on when I moved into you know, sales roles working at different fintechs like IHS Market and Refinitiv. But I made my pivot officially to CS with NASDAQ FinTech division to help them actually launch their CS program. Super exciting opportunity there. I had a fantastic leader who was basically like, "We don't know anything. Help guide us. We've got this great group of customers. Let's make them happier. Let's drive some expansion opportunities. All these sort of things." So fantastic pivot there. And then ultimately, now I'm doing some consulting work for different companies looking to streamline some of their CS practices.
That's amazing. It's amazing journey. I actually, like yourself, started with sales in the early days, and before that, I started on the private equity and finance side as well. So I know that journey. It's an interesting one, and it's definitely exciting to get into the tech and then the CS part of things as well. It kind of just opens up the whole new perspective on things. So that's a very
Mm.
cool journey that you've gone through, and very helpful. And I'm sure you'll touch on that how can those experiences help formulate a successful CS career as well. So that's really cool to hear about. And you mentioned at the end there, you kind of consulting today. You work with different businesses. Talk about kind of your current company, let's say your consultancy, and the work that you're doing. How do you kind of go from the operator piece to doing your own thing and really kind of spreading that impact across multiple organizations? What was that transition like?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's sort of natural kind of segue for me because, you know, I really do believe in community. You know, I am involved in different, you know, customer success communities. So you run into different companies, and then also too because I do, you know, like to kind of write about my journey, my ideas, some of the things I'm learning from peers. So luckily for me, you know, I've just been able to kind of bump into companies that want it, have, you know, questions and want to talk about ways that maybe I can use my experience to help them. And I think some of the biggest, well, and given kind of my finance fintech background, it tends to be bigger enterprise entities. And I think the biggest struggle with these bigger entities is trying to define what CS is. And I think, well, it's not limited to just these entities. I think if you go from one company to the next, we know customer success looks so different. And so I think that's the biggest struggle. And one of the things that I think I'm seeing, and probably you're seeing too, I'd love to hear from you all as well, is there's this, what I see is like this consolidation of roles with the onset of AI. A lot of these companies are trying to understand, as we all are, how can we integrate that into our systems. I think a lot of companies are sort of kind of bolting on AI into their solutions so they can tell their customers they have it. That's some of the challenges associated to that. And then they're also trying to figure out, well, hey, can I just replace the human with AI? And I think we've seen some, you know, instances. Just today, I read about Klarna. Klarna got rid of their whole service desk, and it was a disaster. They're bringing the humans back. And the reason for that is because, right? Because AI can't replace the human, but it can augment the human experience. Customers, you still need that. So anyway, so those are some of the challenges that I'm seeing right now, and plus so many others.
Wow.
Amazing. Amazing.
Cynthia, with obviously I have you on LinkedIn, and with all these communities, CS communities that you're part of, or I also see that you go to some of like the top most popular events on CS. When it comes down to CS and how it is evolving, what are your thoughts on that, and where do you think customer success is going in the next few years?
Yeah, Ivy, I mean, I think we just all keep asking that question, and this goes back to AI too. Like, is AI going to replace us all? I don't think it is. At least not. None of us is going into the matrix yet. So let's embrace it, right? And from a CS perspective, I do think that, and I've been saying this, and I'm not the only one. I do think that it's going to have to be. It doesn't have to be, but my feeling is that commercially tied CSMs are the way to go. Because if you're a lot of times in the past, I think they're like CS to delight customers. I don't want to be delighted. I want a solution that actually works and that I'm getting value out of. And that's something that customer success and CSM leaders all talk about as well, right? Like, how do we bring value to our customers? And so one of the ways you can do that is, I don't say you lead with the revenue, because I think CSMs and some leaders get afraid, like, oh, I don't want to become a salesperson. But when you're having those discovery calls, which discovery doesn't end when the sales cycle ends, when the contract ends, it's throughout the whole customer journey. You're having those conversations when you're asking about the business, about the business. You're thinking about like ways that they can more deeply utilize your solution to help them solve problems. And you're also thinking about ways that like how the customer is growing. Are they expanding? Have they added teams? Have they entered new markets? And can your solutions complement that? That's how you holistically and strategically integrate those commercial conversations. And I think, unfortunately, so many CSMs who don't have sales background are very, it's a clunky process. And so like the CS leaders really need to enable their teams. And that's not a one and done training, by the way. That's an ongoing training, conversations, role plays, which everyone hates, but and I did too, but it made me better. So that's where I see commercial CS is really the way to go to kind of keep CS more stable.
Well, yeah, I love that. And that's one of the things that I've been hearing a lot when it comes down to looking for a new career. Is apparently what I'm hearing is that apparently sales professionals have the most stable career because they're driving revenue. And this makes me think about what you go back to what you were saying, Cynthia, how important having a commercial mindset it is in being in CS. I've heard you speak about customer success in different ways through me following you on LinkedIn and also through collaborating on different webinars. And I can see you are just so passionate about it. So I wanted to ask you, what fascinates you about customer success?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I know. I won't. First of all, I won't get involved in anything unless I care, and if I care, I'm going all in. So you're right. I am passionate about CS, but really, what the reason why is because I really believe, in relationships, like human to human relationships. I've met so many interesting people in the past. I've had amazing customers that I've worked with who later become friends, because when you consistently deliver value to people, they really see you as a partner, and they'll give you the straight talk. And I'm all about straight talk. Let's keep it real. And so I think the reason I love customer success is because once upon a time it used to be the sales funnel, but we all know now that it's actually a bow tie, right? That the growth, once you have the customer, it's a great opportunity to keep them and grow with them. And so I really do enjoy having those conversations with customers. Sometimes the conversations are hard. Sometimes you have to push back because customers might have unrealistic expectations. And when things go wrong, you sort of have to let them vent at you and then bring things way down and say, okay, I'm going to resolve this problem in this way. And that does take some kind of like trial and tribulations to get the point to stay even. But I love those daily challenges. I love that challenge, and I do love and it's funny, I'm not an early adopter by anything, but to me things like AI really make sense. It's not the only thing that's going to change our lives in business. And I think that challenge of how to integrate that and other things, other changes that are happening are like really the only way that you're going to be relevant to your customers and to your own career.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's a great point. As kind of as you're speaking about all the different things that we're seeing, and I mean, I've seen this as well as we're talking to different people on this platform and others as well. the commercialization of customer success, right? The revenue focus, but then also how AI, as I would say, it's an amplifier of what you're doing. Good or bad, if you're leveraging AI the right way, it'll just amplify what you're doing and take it to a new level. And I think, yeah, it's not going to replace the human, but it's going to scale the human productivity and opportunity to kind of heights that we haven't seen before. So embracing that, like you said, we're not all in the matrix just yet. So until we get
Yeah.
there, it's just about embracing it and kind of leveraging that into the future, which is just such a fascinating part of customer success, where this will be deeply rooted in everything that we're doing. So I totally agree with you there, Cynthia. And kind of, as you've been talking about your background here and some of the different things that your perspectives on different things, as obviously you've come up as an operator, now as a consultant, speaker, advisor, really at the forefront of what we're doing in customer success out there globally. Can you maybe take us through some of the biggest learnings that you've had along the way in the space? What are some of the things that you've kind of learned, as translated and transitioned across your roles, across the last several years of your career that you still have today?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. Two things kind of jump out at me. I mean, like I said, I've worked like in finance and fintechs, and the nugget, like everybody's after kind of the enterprise customers and the opportunity, because obviously it's like a big opportunity to make a ton of money. But I think it's like, especially things like global financial organizations. But the opportunity also presents the challenge of working in a highly regulated space that's slow to change and the last to adopt to new technology or ideas, just simply because of like the regulation and the bigness of them. And quite
Yeah,
frankly, that's not limited to finance. That's any massive enterprise company. But this is why it's especially important. I think it's helpful if you've either worked in that space or become a student of how these entities operate and where they need the most help. Because if you take this approach, which is the long, like you're in it for the long haul, which I'm always about the long game, this is really how you're going to win the business, because you're going to win. And again, this is assuming that your solution works and all these things.
right.
But this is because the rewards can be tremendous. But one of the other things that I see too is like how leveraging data, is very like sketchy at different companies. Like I think too many times the data is dirty, incomplete, disjointed, and I'm not just talking about CRM, because that we know is insane, but different data sets, and especially in kind of the enterprise based customers and solutions are so complex that the silos are there typically, and there's little appetite to coordinate to make a serious attempt to clean data and collaborate across teams. And so if you're this is and to me, these are opportunities. Like if you want to understand the enterprise space, become a student of it. If you want to like really leverage data and get your ideas adopted, then be the one that initiates that change. And that's one of the things I did at NASDAQ. I was just like, let's talk to, like, we're trying to do this initiative. Let's talk to marketing. What tools do they have? We're trying to, like, this is the feedback we're getting the customers. Let's put this in a voice of customer and send it and work with product to see what they want, what they think. Because if you start, I guess maybe the biggest learning is really collaboration. Because if you really are able to kind of bring insights and look for ways to partner with their internal partners, and without pointing fingers, like with real ideas, that's really how you're going to move the needle.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point, and so many good learnings in what you were kind of describing now, because I think in particular in the enterprise space, but also downstream, right, mid-market, even some scale-ups, as they kind of start to compile a lot of data across systems, across these different silos. I think one of the things that we've seen a ton, at Restart now, as we're focusing a lot on the agentic piece and doing a lot of the AI stuff ourselves, is it's such a huge advantage to have a data structure and data readiness that is there to leverage AI at its full capacity, because that's a huge blockade for actually getting and unleashing the power of AI downstream. Is if you don't have not just the right data, but the right data cleanliness, as you said, dirty data versus clean data, but then also the right data infrastructure to actually be able to leverage that with AI, and especially in the enterprise segment, that's such a big bottleneck a lot of times for a lot of these projects. And you have massive enterprises that are trying to unlock this across their organization in different places, but they're sitting on 20-year-old systems that are just kind of housing the stuff that's been there forever, and they don't really know how to even start cleaning that up or reformatting that to do the right thing. So I think that's just such a huge piece that you bring up there, Cynthia, because that will be business critical for so many organizations in terms of leveraging AI in particular. and not falling behind. So I think that that's an excellent point that they're bringing up there.
Yeah, Hyder, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because it's actually you made me think of something too. Because if you are like like a startup or a mid-sized company, whatever, this is a fantastic opportunity. If you're competing with in a space with a behemoth, you're more spry. You can like really get the data cleanup is way more easy to do, and that can make you much more agile. Which is like like at an enterprise space, it's like turning the Titanic, right? We all know how that
Yes.
ended up, right? And it's like it's so tough. So you are at much more of an advantage if you think about it in that space. And you're absolutely right. If you don't have the data and the structure to start with, how can you possibly build and scale and any sort of program or solution?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and again, can help give you an advantage that it's really hard to gain as you scale up and become really big. And maybe staying a little bit on that, not necessarily data, but just in general, like as you come into organizations, right? As a consultant, a big part of that is obviously typically would be, I imagine, to like you said, course correct, level up, or help improve the customer success organization in some way, defining it, so on and so forth. I'm kind of curious to see, like, as you're coming into these different organizations, what are maybe some of the most common mistakes that you see that they've done or are doing currently, where you see, okay, that's always a good opportunity, or a lot of times a good opportunity to make an impact or make change uh, within CS terms fairly quickly, which we know is not overnight, but over time. But what are some of those mistakes that you see a lot of organizations do across the board that they quickly identify?
Yeah, I mean, I wish there was like a really sexy answer, but there really isn't. It's so basic. It's two things. It's the silos, right? People are like,
Uh-huh.
we're not sharing knowledge, and sometimes actively working against each other, which is insanity. And these are companies I've worked at too, by the way. And not,
Right.
by the way, not always enterprise, like smaller companies too
Right.
that I've been
Yeah.
at. Like, what you all have some old feud, and the customer suffers, right? Um, so I would say like that lack of collaboration there. Um, but I also think that like people being like in love with their own ideas. So basically, like this is the structure that I built, like and not wanting to adopt something new. This happens a lot too when companies merge. You know what I mean? So if somebody, like one company, basically, takes on another company, it becomes this kind of Frankenstein of two systems that need to integrate, and that also becomes structures like how they go to market with sales, how they do their customer success. And then it becomes these fiefdoms like, well, our way is the best way, instead of looking at an efficient way to kind of combine both forces. And even if that didn't happen, if you bring a consultant in or anybody in to think about a new idea, if someone is so married to the ideas that they've done for the last successfully for the last 3, 5, 7 years, whatever, then you're not going to make any change, because you do need the leadership to be the one that bring that down. So it sounds so basic, but it really is the biggest stumbling block.
Yeah, makes sense. And Cynthia, I obviously have seen all the experience that you've had both in sales and in customer success. So if you've really been able to accomplish a lot within a leadership a role as a woman. I wanted to ask you, because you've navigated male dominated sectors both in finance and in defense and in fintech, and so I wanted to ask you, what would be some of the unique challenges that you have faced as a woman leader, and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, honestly, I wish that wasn't a relevant question, but it's 100% relevant. It is unique. Well, I think it's really tricky. I think what it is like when like a lot of like finance and tech, is very male dominated. So I think sometimes what happens is, and often unfortunately, people don't see you. You don't look like what they have in terms of like what you look like, the background you have, like where you went to school, all those different things. And I think there can be a lot of sameness, right? Because it's like confirmation bias, like, well, hey, like, this is I need people that think like me, or whatever. And I don't necessarily think that it's intentional a lot of the times, right? I just think it's just people like, well, no. If I've got two people, like this candidate looks more qualified because they look like what I think success should look like versus the other. So unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do about that other than really, if you get the chance to get in the door and have conversations, basically talk about like the ideas and why your uniqueness can bring value right away. Like whether it's in an interview process, whether it's like, in a meeting room with executives, et cetera. Don't be afraid to share a different idea, because I have to say, early in my career, I definitely was. I was like, here's the radar. I was under it. I was like, just leave me here. Like, no one, I don't want anybody to notice me. I'm going to just do my thing. But that doesn't work. So I think you don't be afraid to stand out. And I think the biggest thing, quite frankly, is getting sponsors and mentors. And people get confused by that. So, like, a mentor can be somebody that either works in your industry, or outside your industry, but essentially can advise you on some strategic career moves, from like, like a long-term career move. And a sponsor is somebody that works at the company that, can help move you through or get more visibility for you. And a lot of times it's the person that hired you, right? They saw that difference as a positive. And I have to say, from my own experience, it's been super, super helpful for me to help me kind of like at least get some more visibility, and movement within my roles.
Wow, I love that, Cynthia. I would say that I have had incredible mentors throughout my lifetime, whether that was through my own personal career or anything else, like some sort of passion projects that I was trying to pursue. And I would say that having mentors is one of the best ways to collapse time and to fast track anybody's personal career or goals. So I love that. I wanted to ask you, what sort of advice would you give to women that are trying to transition from middle management to executive leadership?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. And I think this is where your mentors and definitely sponsors, you want to have internal sponsors, people that like you. And again, this is where I think collaboration can really help you. And this goes for men and women. It's not necessarily limited to women. So this is where, like, if you are building relationships with your marketing team, your product team, your sales team, whoever it is, and working on successful projects, these are people that are going to say, "Hey, this is the person that gets things done, has the right ideas, and will roll up their sleeves, and get the get the project from start to finish." Because I think, again, large companies or small companies, so many times there's an idea and everybody's really excited about it, but 6 months later it becomes less shiny and people want to just ditch it and move on to the next thing. So you really do need to kind of, like, get the partners to kind of keep things going, to see things to completion. But I also think it's about investing in yourself. And I think, like, getting personal coaches, people that you trust, that can advise you properly. I think early in my career, I just said, "Hey, I'm going to work my butt off for whatever company I work at, but it's up to them to teach me." That's maybe 50% true. Quite frankly, if you really want to move to the next level in any respect, hire somebody. Spend the money out of your own pocket if necessary, and hire that person to help you move through it, because that outside perspective from someone who's seasoned, especially if they're in your space, it's going to move mountains.
I agree.
Uh, yeah, definitely. And I think it's just such an underrated thing, right? Creating those networks for yourself as an individual. I think, like you said, back in the day, it was like, oh, you started a company and then you expect them to have this amazing training program basically throughout the years, and you're kind of just advancing and learning in that. But I think a lot of people start noticing that, like, the training perspectives become so internalized and you miss out on a lot of things, that knowledge that exists out there. So that's where we see these different communities pop up and grow and thrive, and people trying to really connect and do different things together. And things like this podcast and other resources where you're trying to get that knowledge out to more people. It just has such a huge impact, because you know what you know until someone else shows you something different, and then you learn that, and then on it goes. I think that that's just such a great perspective on the mentors outside and the sponsors inside the company. That combination can be really powerful if it's the right people supporting you in your journey. So I think that's spot on, Cynthia. Great advice there. Um, and to shift gears a little bit, staying on kind of the trail of teaching and sharing perspectives, right? You're someone obviously that has a global presence as thought leader in the space, and you operate mainly within in the U.S. market and other global markets that you've been part of. And a lot of our listeners, actually, the U.S. is one of our top three listening countries, but a lot of our audience is also in the Middle East, which is a extreme growth market right now, as depending on when someone's listening to this podcast, there's a lot of investments happening into the region from an AI perspective, innovation, and to the different main countries. But it's still a region that's growing and that's learning, and especially on the customer success side, right? Which is a discipline that is that is newer to the region and that is growing rapidly. I'm kind of curious, what are some of your main learnings or trends, ideas from some of these global markets that you operate that you think can translate really well to organizations in a growth market like the Middle East that are trying to kind of ramp up their CS work and the way that they're approaching working with customers? What are some of the main trends or maybe ideas that you see that could help them do that effectively?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question because I think, last year when we worked on the webinar series, that's one of the things we talked about. How can we adopt what's working here, to broader markets like the Middle East? And I think, so many of them can be, but I think it takes time. And I think one of the main, roadblocks or stumbling blocks, in the region is there's a stumbling block that's in the U.S. It's like, what is customer success? Like, what are people trying to what are companies trying to achieve in the post-sale process? And I think that definition, well, it's different every company, but I think that if you're looking at a more commercially tied role, I think that's one of the biggest ways that, again, in any growth market would make sense and make it common sense. So obviously, like, and this is where I think like kind of the consolidation of roles is going to come into effect, which I think is definitely happening, right? SDR, BDR, AEs, I think they're going to turn into one with the help of AI. And I think on the post-sale side, account management and customer success, they look very different from a commercial standpoint. I think, either at a company, it could be either or, but it's not going to be both. I've worked at companies where there's both, and there's a lot of confusion. So I think, like in the Middle East region, I think definitely, understanding maybe that consolidation, defining what customer success looks like, and also that depends on the complexity of the product too, right? So if you've got widgets, then the CSM could handle all the retention, they could do the expansion. But if you've got like a super complex solution, then you might need someone to implementation to get the customer like on board if there's like data that needs to be reviewed, et cetera, and adopted to the tool, and working kind of in pods that way. But I think that definition, what are you trying to achieve out of it? I would definitely recommend something like, commercial achievement, and then also, the enablement, the best practice that I don't see widely adopted in any sort of uniform way on customer success. But if that's something I think that would happen, like in terms of not just enabling them, with tools like, I don't know, CRM and Gong or things like that, call recording things, but I think like in how to engage with customers. And I think if you had the budget for enablement and you can only do one thing, I would say spend it all on discovery. I'm not kidding. I know everybody's gonna how many people are gonna throw tomatoes at me, but I'm telling you, discovery. Because if you understand how to ask the right questions, listen to the responses, and in real time react, then you're going to have a conversation where people are like, oh, this person's really got a grip on it. So those are two areas, like, define what you want customer success to be, and then if, an enablement, if nothing else, discovery. Discovery is so key. And if you have someone who's an ex salesperson, they should know it. So that's an advantage, but that doesn't mean that we can't bring the other people up to scratch as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I was actually on a panel the other week, and one of the things that we spoke about, which is the importance of business acumen and CS, right? As part of that is discovery is a huge part of the understanding the business, asking the right questions. And like you said, think asking the questions is one thing, but knowing what to do with the answers and how to translate that into the business value and the conversation, that's kind of what sets those best people apart. And like you said, if you do anything well and CS, we can do that really well. It goes beyond just the product and the things around it. They'll truly see you as everyone always talks about being a consultant, a business advisor, as a CS rep. It really comes down to that piece of it, right? Can you have a really good business conversation and create business value? That's really the only measurement of that kind of thing that everyone's been talking about for many years. It's like, yeah, CS needs to be an advisor, all that stuff, but what does it really
Strategic
mean?
partner.
Strategic partner, yeah, there's a lot of buzzwords for it, but in practice, we all know it's like some people do it really well, some don't, and typically the difference comes down to discovery, business acumen, and understanding the customer, truly understanding the customer on a strategic level. So that I think that's a great thing. But it's just funny thing to mention because we hear that buzzword so often in CS, and sometimes it's just said for the sake of it versus actually having a plan behind how to do it properly. Like I'm sure you
Agreed.
come in and help companies do. So that's great. And then maybe kind of on that as well, right? Like we talked a lot about AI and how that can kind of create an advantage for organizations at scale, and customer success is not an exception there, right? And I think, increasingly it went from kind of nice to have. Okay, how do we use AI? We need to use that, the chat GPT stuff of the world, to now becoming a must have, right? It's mandated from the board level. It's something like you said, some companies maybe take too far, which maybe is even better than take it not far enough, because then you can adjust back in different ways. But it's really becoming a must have and must implement, must use in companies. How would you recommend that CS leaders think about how to adopt AI within their teams, within their organization? Because it's not just a simple, plug and play, or let's use more chat. There's a lot of governance, regulation, especially in the fintech space, or financial sectors. So how should they think about it? How should they approach using AI when it's a must-have, but they're still figuring things out?
Yeah, yeah. That is such a good question because I think there's so many tools coming out and there's so many ideas. Here's all the different ways. We know right out of the gate that the biggest use cases are to create efficiencies, right? To automate customer call follow-ups and outbound cadences. But those tend to be generic. I really sincerely hope if people are using those that they are zhuzhing them, right? Like, I mean, I think we all use Chat GPT in our personal lives, and I wouldn't necessarily just cut and paste something that I thought of a framework or a conversation and just send it to somebody, right? Come on. But those are like the efficiencies we think of right out of the gate. I think going forward, and actually it's happening right now. Well, first of all, I would say don't try to do everything as a leader. If you're trying to implement it, start with one thing at a time, right? And make that successful and then build on that. But one of the things that I'm seeing happening right now that I think is really helpful is to use it to, basically create predictive analytics. And that starts with, creating and improving customer segmentation using AI, right? Like basically, putting all the data together, doing a really, really structured, segmentation analysis. This is going to help uncover expansion opportunities within that segment. Like what tools you have that you can sell to this sort of same type of customer, and that's still going to require looking closer to make sure if in fact it will. But that to me is like an immediate use case, as a result of a good segmentation with AI, and then and an AI that can incorporate all the conversations, right? Like the conversations, the emails, the CRM, all the channels, etc. And then it's going to also help refine value added insights to bolster those discovery calls, which I'm obsessed with. But I think those are like some of the easiest ways because I think some of the challenges when you tell because to me, like how to add value is super obvious. Because again, I've been on both sides of the customer journey. But some people say, well, what does that mean? Like, what is the value, right? And I'm like, well, great question. If you're a student of your customer, then each customer or that segment has their value perception is different, and that's what you should be honing in on. And that's why this analysis is important. And every time you provide an insight, that's where it's like another chit in the box for you to say like, hey, this person really brings the goods. I'm going to answer their emails. I'm going to show up to their calls. I'm going to like go to the QBR, right? I'm going to bring my executive buyer to the QBR. And it's so not sexy, but it's the smart way. And with any sort of like a new tool or whatever the shiny object is, don't try to do everything. Pick one strategy. And that's the one of the ones I think that just is so, so smart to start incorporating AI into the conversation. And as you were alluding to earlier, to augment the interaction with the customer, not replace it.
Oof, amazing. All great advice, Cynthia. And to take this a little further, I wanted to ask you if you could give us some sort of like framework that has worked for you, any sort of like maybe framework thinking model that you have used within any CS role that you've had throughout your career.
Yeah, of course, of course. And this model I did a customer success roadmap, which we all know roadmaps will, right? And the reason I started this analysis was because basically, like we all know the product roadmap is always a little bit dodgy because things happen and things get moved out. And I was like, well, what about like what we're delivering from the customer success standpoint? And this was my time at Nasdaq because we had these massive customers, these like all the global banks you could think of, and then plus brokers, commodity traders, like all the things, hedge funds, the whole thing. And so I decided, I'm like, okay, well, why don't we do? It wound up being a 9-step roadmap, and essentially it started with segmentation. And I wish I had AI at the time because I literally just pulled stuff down, like all the information from Salesforce into spreadsheets, and did like a manual, like which one's a hedge fund, which one's a global bank. And because what happens with segmentation, you immediately see who your ICP is. It's the companies buying all your product, right? Spending millions, not hundreds, right? So that was like, and then it was like, of course, we had this tiered system, which just tiered based on like cost, business spend. We know segmentation on spend is not amazing, right? You have to look at the use cases and all the nuances. So I did journeys for the different segments, and then from there we had 37 outstanding projects, and we're like, all of these can't be important. Which one are they? And I literally went through and just said, okay, let's list them. What's the benefit to the customer? What's the benefit to us? What can we automate? I mean, this whole thing. And then I did a matrix, which was like, impact benefit, like which one on these scales makes the most impact? Because they can't all be important, right? And then further on to that, like took that analysis and tried to quantify it, like which makes or saves money. Did a whole RACI, did potential roadblocks, and then based on data was able to say these are the most important projects. These, for the next 12 months. This is how we're going to do them in order, and here's the timeline that it's going to take. And again, this is a lot of like guesswork because nothing's ever perfect, but it was the first time anybody actually used data. I'm like, this is our customer data. And when I presented my boss, he loved it. We presented it to our leadership, and immediately, just through the journeys themselves, where we were like, some of our customers were in UAT for months and years. They never wanted to like go live because they're just like, oh, let the analyst just help us do our job. We're like, you're getting cut off after X, depending on what they bought, and then that immediately opened up opportunities for our advisory team, because we're like, if you need hand holding to this extent, we have an advisory team that's happy to work with you forever at cost.
Wow,
Uh,
incredible.
Great. Yeah, definitely great. And so I mean, just a small follow-up on that, Cynthia, because I think one thing that CS leaders struggle with quite a bit is showing their impact, right? And I think one of the big missing pieces in doing that is the kind of connection between data and business goals and some of the how that correlates, right? And you talked about commercializing kind of CS over the coming years. Can you maybe just give us kind of note a thought on that specific piece of it, like how to leverage that data, those business critical metrics to actually showcase your value as a CS leader? Because I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, and you have to do it. You have to do it. I think one of the easy in theory, implementation, something else. CSQLs. Why are they not being tracked consistently? Customer success qualified leads. It's one of those things where, like we know that, the CSMs are passionate about helping their customers, right? And I think sometimes helping customers is like they wind up being service 2.0, or CSMs, bless their heart. They want to solve everything for the customer. But we know the real value is in ensuring that they're going to, renew, right? And as
Yes.
somebody said the other day, like recurring impact is recurring revenue, right? And that's what we need to like have like the CSMs. That's what we need them to think of. But as leaders, we need to say, okay, you're having conversations and you're really excited. If you integrate discovery and you start to uncover, oh, they're opening new, offices, or they're adding new staff, all these things, they're entering these new markets. These could be ways that you can uncover a lead. And if you have those conversations, you're doing the right discovery, maybe even follow-up calls, you know, find a way, even if you have to put it in an Excel spreadsheet to track it. I don't care. Don't make an excuse. CSQL, track that, because it's good for the CSM, because it's a win for them. It's a way for them to kind of show the value. But as a leader and for the team, it's saying, look at all these CSQLs that my team uncovered, and hand it over to sales. And there could be some grappling between sales. We were already talking to them. That's okay, but so are we. And we're gonna, and I think that's like one of the lowest hanging fruit. But how you implement it, in theory, you should integrate a CSQL through a CRM like the Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever. But yeah, there's different ways, to skin the cat, and I think there's a lot of excuses people use not doing it.
Yeah, no, awesome advice. I think that the core thing of that is just connecting the revenue impact, right, that you're having of the work that you're doing in CS. Because ultimately, it's whatever we want to kind of think about it is to make sure the customer is happy enough to renew and grow with the organization. Otherwise, it's kind of that's why you're doing the job, right? So I think that's something we can't shy away from. That's how we impact from a CS perspective the organization at scale. So showcasing that to things like CQLs is a great way of doing that effectively, I think. Awesome, awesome, Cynthia. So we've actually been running through our conversation here, and we're at the end of it now. And what we typically do here, Cynthia, at this stage before we wrap up, is we'd love to kind of do a little kind of lightning round of questions with you. So we have a few questions and a few quick answers. So we'd love to get your perspective on. So if you are ready, Cynthia, we'd love to jump into that section of the podcast before we wrap up.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, perfect. So we'll start you off easy here. So, first question to you, Cynthia, is what's your favorite content to consume right now? Favorite book, podcast, something else?
Oh, I'm all about audiobooks. I've listened to them all the time. So essentially, and I know that's just the medium, but I'm like the world's slowest reader, but I want to learn. And audiobooks, I live in New York City. I walk everywhere. I don't own a car.
Right.
So if you see me with headphones on, I'm probably listening to a book, and I would highly recommend it because there's, like, how excited can you be to be like, oh, let's read the Challenger sale, right? Like that excited to sit down and read that. But if I'm out doing errands, super easy. Audio.
Love it. Yeah, I like audio as well, so I'm all for that recommendation. Okay, perfect. Next one, Cynthia. Right now, favorite people to follow, get inspiration from? Any specific person out there or people that you want to highlight?
Yeah, it's funny because I know like there's so many incredible CS thought leaders. But I like to kind of expand out of that. And one of the people that I really love to follow is Scott Leese. He's a go-to-market leader, and he writes a lot about his work with founders, startups, the evolving sales process. But his ideas trickle down to all parts of sales, and companies of all sizes. But Scott, he's the tough love guy. He gives it to you straight up. I love him.
Yeah, no, he has great content for sure. He's definitely a good follow on LinkedIn as well, if anyone out there looking for that. Okay, perfect. And then staying on the ideas here, what's your kind of favorite new idea that you've heard kind of as of late? Some new idea or thought that you heard like, oh, that's really cool or that you're into right now?
Yeah, well, we were just talking about CSQLs, but the CSQA, Customer Success Qualified Advocates, and it was something
Mhm.
actually Jan Young recently wrote about, and it's essentially saying like, as we follow like leads, uncovering leads, like if you've got advocates at the company, again, I guess this could also be like your champions to track those, because the way I see, she's got a whole, I'm sure, like deep idea about that. But how I see it is these are people that can maybe refer you to new customers. Now that would be a super secret. And I'm going, this is like CSQL 2.0. But if you
Right.
could get a customer to make an introduction to another potential customer and it's coming from CS, that's a massive win. So CSQAs, I think there's a lot of ways if you can track your advocates really, I think it's a good one.
Wow,
Nice, very nice.
I love that. Such a great
Good
perspective.
idea, right?
So
Yeah,
I
it's
wish it
good.
great.
was my idea, it was hers. Yeah,
Yeah, and Jan is great. She's a
it's
partner
awesome.
and amazing person. So not surprising she's coming with the good ideas there.
Yeah. Yeah, she has many great
Definitely.
ideas.
He
um,
does.
all, all right, Cynthia, this is my favorite question to ask in the podcast. What is one life philosophy you like to live by?
Yeah. So this is my philosophy right now. One of the things I'm thinking of, I'm an aspiring minimalist, which is not simply about owning less things. I know, like people are like, oh my God, what do you like to have like two things in your apartment? That's not what it is. It's more about making time for the things that matter and saying no to the things that aren't a priority. So for me, I just wanted to simplify both my personal and professional life and make time for the things and the people that matter. So that's how I see minimalism, and also too, like getting rid of extreme, like not especially in the US, it's such a consumer driven, like environment culture. I'm like, more is not necessarily better. So I just really try to be intentional in all the things I do. And I think minimalism has helped me with that.
Wow, love
I
that.
totally-
Love that. Aspiring minimalism. I love it.
Aspiring. It's a work in progress because I just bought a pair of shoes the other day and they're gorgeous. I make no apologies.
It's always a balance getting there. That's something.
I love that. All right, Cynthia. And lastly, on the weekends, what are you doing to decompress?
Oh yeah. So really like on my off time, I enjoy reading and listening to books. I really do like learning. I do that in my off time. I really do want to consume and understand and get different perspectives. But I really love, I absolutely love travel, and I have a commitment to fitness. So I go to the gym all the time, or like run in the park now, especially it's perfect time for that. But I really feel like um, fitness, because it kind of keeps you like life's it's a marathon, right? So I want to be spry. I want to be like ninja, and travel, because I just love going and experiencing different cultures and being with different people. And as much as I love my relationships in CS and professional, I do love to engage with people and on their own turf. So a huge travel fan.
Nice, beautiful. And where can people find you if they're trying to connect you or follow the journey?
Yeah, of course. So like, really it would be LinkedIn. You can, read my content or DM me directly. Plus I also have a huge initiative right now with some of the communities I'm involved in, specifically CX Exchange. I'm doing live events all through 2025. I just did a happy hour last month. I'm doing one during Tech Week, doing CS Week, all the things, because I feel like we're still struggling post COVID. People want to be together, so I'm just trying to find those venues to kind of bring people together. So that's a huge focus for me.
Love that. In most of those events are in New York?
Yes, well, all the ones, because I'm in New York, they're all going to be in New York, and I'm
Okay.
sure there's going to be some other events, but I'm featuring. Yeah, I'm actually doing probably 4 or 5 events this year, happy hours, and there's going to be a big panel for Customer Success Week in October, and then Tech Week's coming up like just next week actually, so or in 2 weeks. So yeah, so just trying to like align and get and not just because I know a lot of people in CS in New York, but I'm like I don't know them all. I want to meet more people. I want to engage. I want to broaden my network and get different perspectives. So yeah, that's the
Beautiful.
goal.
Great community builder.
Trying,
Yes.
trying.
Amazing, amazing. Awesome, Cynthia. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been absolute wonderful conversation, ton of insights, ton of learning. So thank you again for jumping on, and yeah, we look forward to having you back on and talking more AI, CS, and everything in between in the future.
Thanks to both of you. I really enjoyed this conversation. I knew I would. That's why it was an instant yes for me. So looking forward to the next
Amazing.
time.
Awesome. Thanks, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Cheers.
We want to thank our sponsors for supporting the Sussex Revenue podcast. RevSetter is the #1 customer success and management platform in the Middle East region, offering global capabilities mixed with regional solutions that helps your CS, account management, and go-to-market teams 10x efficiency, improve customer experience, and turbocharge customer retention rates.
And thank you to Medlify, a leading marketplace. Workers and employers in the healthcare space needs and demands meet to create benefits for both sides. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.